our home page layout, we'll need a prototype image of the finished intended look of the home page. To do that, we're going to use Photoshop. Photoshop is perfect for this because one, we can concentrate entirely on appearance, and two, we will not involve any programming skills of any kind. We don't have to use HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever. Okay, to get started, since we understand some basic web design trends, we're going to say File, New, and we'll make our image, our web page, 900 pixels wide and 1,000 pixels high. Now the length of 1,000 pixels is somewhat arbitrary, but I think it'll work well for our particular project. We usually use 72 pixels per inch resolution, and for any projected image, we always use RGB color mode. I like to start with a background color that is white because I'm going to change it anyway. Here we are. Here's our web page, and before our web page image, I should say, before I go any further, we better save it in the right folder. File, Save As, and you simply have to move to your particular folder wherever you're saving your work and move into the Images folder and make sure it's a PSD file. We'll call this Prototype. I'm going to use one word with lowercase letters following standard file naming convention. Okay, for my tools setup, I always like to use New in CS6, and if you just hit Reset, you'll get the tools in a good starting point order. Out of all of these palettes here, the main palette we're going to be using is Layers, by the way. Okay, next what I'll do is click a foreground color. I never use only web colors. I like to choose any color that I really like. I find a color, I click on it, and before I do anything, I always write down the hexadecimal definition of that color so I can retrieve it or set it up later at any time. Alright, I click OK. I've got a foreground color. Next, I do the same thing and find a background color. Before I do anything else, I'll make a note of that hex color number. Very important, and I'll click OK. By the way, whenever you use multiple shades of the same color, the correct term for that is a monochromatic look. Alright, now I'm going to expand my layers so I can see everything, and I want to put everything I come up with on a different layer. So I'm going to move this over just a little bit here. Well, if I can, that is. Yeah, I'll drag it over here just a little to get it out of the way. I'll add a new layer. Now I'll select the gradient tool. I'll select the type of gradient I want. In this case, I want foreground to background. And I'll select the gradient style. I'll use the very first one right here. And I'm on a separate layer, so I'm ready to rock and roll. I'll drag my mouse diagonally, and this is the gradient that I produce. If I'm interested, I can try different ways of dragging to produce different effects. Here's a slightly different look, and I kind of like this look a little bit better, so I think I'll use this one instead. Now, very important, before we go any further, we want to be aware of our what we call above the fold concept. To do that, it's quite simple. We're going to need to create a guideline. Here's how. If you go View, we're going to say Show Rulers. Here we are. Just click Rulers right here. Now, I always display rulers in pixels. All right. You can do that by going Edit, Preferences, and setting up your units and rulers to pixels. Good idea to measure in pixels for web design. Okay, next, all I have to do is put your mouse on the top ruler and then left mouse click drag, and I'm going to drag a guideline about 600 pixels down the page, somewhere between 600 and 700. Sometimes I will actually drag more than one guideline so I can kind of see what range where scrolling will begin. And what this indicates is anything below this line is probably where scrolling will begin, and that helps me out an awful lot. All right, I'm going to save frequently, And whenever I save, if I get this maximize compatibility screen, I always say OK. The next thing I'm going to do is add layers, and I will add various web page elements exactly where I want them to be. I've continued with the process explained in the last video tutorial, and here is my completed web page prototype. And as you can see, I've expanded the layers to show you that I have many layers. I've put every single thing, every element on a different layer. Um, and here are my above the fold indicators, and you can kind of see where scrolling is going to start. It's going to start somewhere in here for most viewers. I have every single thing on a different layer, and I can move things around just to double check. You'll see also that I've added content, in this case just Latin filler and things like that, or the Gettysburg Address or whatever, just so I can see what words would really look like. On this particular web page, this will stay the same, and this banner will stay the same, and the footer down at the bottom will stay the same, and everything in the middle will be constantly changing. Well, now that you have your image completely created with every element of your web page, it's a good idea to start planning how will you transform each element on this image into a separate division inside of Dreamweaver. One thing that can really help is to simply make outlines on this final image in a separate layer that will allow you to see and plan exactly where you're going to create divisions. Here's what we'll do. Let's add one new layer at the very top, and then I'll hit the rectangular marquee tool, and all I'm going to do is draw a small box around a rectangle around one particular element on this image. Click Edit and Stroke. I would recommend 2 pixels, and for color, pick any color that'll kind of work for you, that'll really show up. And I click Location Center and click OK. Now you can deselect the dotted line, and now you see a small container which you can hide, but it helps you envision where divisions will be. Now, to show you how this would look completed, here's a layer that I've hidden that I'll show you now. And from this you can see that I can now easily see where every division is going to have to be to create this, to transform this image into a real web page. And in some instances, you'll see, if you look carefully, that I have divisions inside of divisions inside of larger divisions.